Alright then, I'm back for another tier list. So this time, I'm going to look at the Renegade weapons. So, Command & Conquer Renegade was basically a FPS title for like the Command & Conquer series. Probably my favorite game of like the franchise, oddly enough, for like an RTS there we go. For some reason it's frozen there. For an RTS based series it's very different. Basically had a FPS sort of iteration to it, but it was built basically as like an FPS. It wasn't like a main entry into the franchise. People basically loved it for it. Definitely one of the better titles basically. That was not RTS related. Now I'll note about just basically multiple tier lists basically for Renegade, but the other ones I don't feel I basically have like the appropriate knowledge basically to give a tier list basically for. Well, the weapons at least I can somewhat. So I was going to do a tier list for the weapons, and that'll be everything for it. And as you can see, there's quite a few weapons based in Renegade. Now, I will note that I actually have over here a breakdown of all the weapons if you need to know what they basically are all about. So first things first, let's go for the automatic pistol here, which is basically your sidearm. It's got infinite ammo. It's got fairly decent damage and a fairly decent clip size. I'll note that for the engineer in multiplayer, it's basically your go-to weapon because the repair gun doesn't actually do any damage on multiplayer. And even in the single player, it's still pretty useful to sort of get around. So let's see, here's the weapon right here. I mean, it's not anything too powerful. It's not like a Halo Magnum or anything like that, but it still does its job pretty well and competently. I'll favor for an A tier. Because for a backup weapon that basically has infinite ammo, it's a super powerful weapon. Alright, the next weapon I probably should cover would probably be the automatic weapon, rifle here. So I'll note that in multiplayer, the automatic rifle is basically the go-to weapon that you start off with the NOS soldier or the GDI soldier. And Havoc also makes pretty good use of it as well. Now I'll note that the weapon only has 400 rounds, but it's definitely enough basically to do a fairly sizable dent to wherever you attack with it. And that's basically infantry for the most part because it doesn't really work that well in vehicles. It's not a bad weapon basically to issue to a standard soldier, I guess. Nothing too snazzy but because it doesn't actually penetrate armor or anything like that. And that's actually a good reason to put down pistol damage on the B tier here because neither of these weapons right here actually penetrate armor, so they're only limited to basically being fired against the infantry, so that's what they're basically good for. Alright, the chain gun. The chain gun's our first weapon that actually penetrates armor a little bit, so that's this right here, I think. So I'll note the chain gun's basically sort of like a minigun. Basically, it's got sort of Gatling gun sort of appearance. It basically penetrates armor, but does very little damage to it. The main thing for is it's basically a high power automatic rifle that basically does a lot more damage to infantry, and it can damage light armor and vehicles and stuff like that a little bit if you want to as well. Nothing too spectacular, but spectacular enough basically. So we'll leave it in beer tier. I think that's basically fine for it. Alright, the shotgun. The shotgun is basically our first multiplayer only weapon basically to rank here, so let's see where we can find it. It is right there. Now, I'll note that the shotgun is basically a short range weapon, and it does very good damage, but you have to basically get really close to people to basically use it. In multiplayer, I remember making pretty good use of it to headshot the Raven Shaw characters or the Sydney characters, whatever basically I was able to get up through really close and personal to this headshot in the face. But the thing is, you actually have to get up close and personal to them to actually use it. So there is basically that to basically keep in mind. On some multiplayer maps, that's not too useful because there's like too much open space. Other maps, it's like not too bad because it's like not too bad because there's like not as like much open space. I feel for basically down to like the automatic rifle because it's basically around that level. Let's leave it right there. All right, the sniper rifle. The first weapon you basically start off with in the campaign, and basically available to Deadeye and like the non like Black Hand basic sniper. So this thing can basically one shot people if it basically hits them in the head, or you can basically kill like most characters in 4 shots of it if like you hit like their other parts of their body. It does do damage to like vehicles and stuff like that, but it's very like modest to say the least. So you probably wouldn't use it for that purpose. Fairly decent weapon. And I think probably B tier is probably good for it, basically to like just to throw it somewhere. I'm basically putting a B tier by the way because there's like a more powerful weapon that like I'll basically get to it in a moment, but we'll get to it when we get to it. And that's basically right there, the ramjet rifle. So this is basically another multiplayer weapon. The ramjet rifle is basically an upgraded like sniper rifle that basically completely like outshines just how powerful a sniper rifle basically is. You guys use it to damage like helicopters and stuff like that. It's absurd basically what you can basically do with it. Here it is right here, by the way. So the thing about the ramjet rifle is that like again it's basically used to like target infantry, but unlike with the basic sniper rifle, it actually like 2 shots people instead of like 4 shots them if you basically miss their head. And of course if you hit them in the head, then 1 shots them of course as well. So there's that too. What's really nice about it is they can actually take down like aircraft and like light vehicles pretty easily with it. So it's got that going for it, which is pretty nice. So all around, I basically consider it to be like fairly decent for that purpose. Alright, now I get down to a close range weapon, the flamethrower. That's right here. So I'll note that the flamethrower weapon is basically our first like weapon that's like close range. And for the most part, it doesn't really do a whole lot of damage basically to like characters. Basically you can see it has like a fairly short range as you can probably guess for like short range weapon. It's like just double the amount of like the shotgun here. And it's basically got like a multiplier like 2 times 5 type of damage basically going for it. So that does sound like pretty like devastating if like you spray fire or something, but the thing about the flamethrower is that like even though it's like capable of like burning down like enemy buildings and like does damage to like stuff, because you have to get like very close to things again like the shotgun, it's like not that useful. And at the same time, it doesn't instantly kill stuff like the shotgun does, so it's got that basically against it as well. I never really found the flamethrower to be like that useful. I mean, if you need to like have something that like damages like a building from the exterior, it can be okay. But in like Renegade, it's usually better to go inside the building and like blow up a C4. So you'd probably rather do that instead. Probably put that down to D tier, I think. The chem sprayer is basically very similar to the flamethrower, by the way. It does a little bit more damage than like the flamethrower, and I think it can be used to damage armor a little bit better, which is like primarily what chem sprayer is basically used for like the main game, like the original like 95 Command and Conquer. But it's basically got the same sort of like properties as like the flamethrower. And it's basically short range, and you're basically not instantly killing stuff when you basically like hit it with like stuff. It also has a drawback by the way as well, because whenever you basically hit something with like the chemical sprayer, and like it kills like an infantry unit, it may pop out like a visceroid, and that can be kind of annoying to like deal with. So there's that too. I should probably note by the way as well that the flamethrower and the chem sprayer do have like one benefit to them, and that's basically in single player. If you basically play the campaign, like there's basically like pain modifiers for enemies, and if you're basically lit on fire or hit by chemical spray, they'll basically keep taking damage over like time. So they're basically in a stun animation for a little bit. That's basically something nice, but it's just fairly simple, so whatever. And not as well, the chem sprayer here, it does have a drawback where it doesn't really damage like the rear creatures, so it's got that against it as well, basically like the main campaign. Alright, the rocket launcher. And now I get to a really good weapon, the rocket launcher. This is fairly cheap to basically attain in multiplayer, and it basically is also like good against like everything they basically fire against. So you can make damage vehicles. You can basically damage like stuff like out of range, like say obelisks like that, like if you're far enough way enough. In some like multiplayer maps for like the multiplayer like team play based gameplay, you can actually use it to like damage like buildings where like other enemies can't get at you. So lots basically going for it. Definitely one of like the better weapons. I consider like probably better than like the ramjet. So throw it right there, I think. The grenade launcher. So this grenade launcher is basically another like basic like weapon that like um you don't really see a whole lot basically in the single player campaign, and basically in the multiplayer like team based gameplay, it can be useful because you can basically lob like grenades over like walls and stuff like that, and do like a lot of damage with them, I guess, and like damage buildings. It's not that bad for like a weapon to like use, but it's like sort of tricky to use as well. I probably throw it basically just in back of B tier here, so let's just throw it right there. Alright, the laser rifle. So the laser rifle is basically available to like the stealth-based nod characters in like multiplayer, and in like the single player, it's basically our first weapon that like beyond the chemical like sprayer and like the flamethrower, will actually do like damage like over time with like fire-based damage because it's got like a burn element with the laser. It fires a little slower than the laser chain gun, which will basically be covered like after it, but it's a very like modest like damage like at all like face-to-face hits, so damage vehicles, damages like infantry. You basically damage like anything really well with it, so it's good. Probably my favorite weapon basically in the series as well. But I'm still only going to rank it probably lower, a little bit lower than like result, so let's throw it right there, I think. Now the laser chain gun is basically right here. It's basically like a sort of upgraded like laser rifle, and that basically like is like the chain gun. It basically fires like multiple like lasers like in like a stream at stuff. Basically melts basically wherever it hits, so you damage vehicles and stuff like that. Um, I never really found it that useful, basically multiplayer or like basically in like the single player. Just for a simple reason, there's basically are weapons that like you can use. It's just like a if you have the ammo for it, just use it and just like kill stuff with it. I'll probably basically throw it down into like C tier because you're basically spending money in multiplayer basically to get it, and there's basically other stuff you could be spending that money basically on. So not a bad weapon, just like not the greatest. The PIC or the personal ion cannon. This is definitely a very powerful weapon that can be used against vehicles. Um, one shot like characters like a sniper rifle if you hit him in the head. I basically consider like the PIC to be like probably like your standard like pop out, hit something, and like duck back into cover sort of weapon because it's got a very long like reload time. But overall, it's a very good weapon to like use in multiplayer and not that bad basically to use in like single player if you want to basically kill a vehicle real fast or something like that. So yeah, A tier for it. All right, so I missed the like Volt Auto rifle here apparently. So let's cover that then. Um, the Volt Auto rifle is basically like the electric gun that basically Mobius uses in like team-based gameplay and Mendoza uses. It basically like appears bleeding in like the last like level like the campaign too as well. And it is basically like it shoots electricity basically in like an arc basically to like kill stuff real fast. It can damage like vehicles and stuff like that, but it's like a very like low damage basically for that purpose. So honestly, like compared to like the other like weapons that you could get in team-based gameplay, like the PIC or like the ramjet, it's just not as good. This is like better stuff I want to spend it on. So I mean, it's like a good all-around weapon, but a jack of all trades is not really that useful when you basically have like team-based gameplay where like being specialized is like more useful than not. So yeah, C tier for it. The kind of thing I'm just gonna throw is basically down D tiers because I really don't like care for chem spares, so whatever. Alright, so now we get to the railgun, which is basically the personal ion cannon for like the Nods faction. I'll note that basically like it's carried by like the Ravenshaw character in like multiplayer, and it basically is like this like the personal ion cannon, except like as far as the giant laser stuff. So all there really is to basically say about it. The real gun. I think it's this one right here. So we're just gonna basically throw this basically right next to each other because there really is like no difference between like these two like weapons here. I'll throw it just ahead, I guess, a little bit because like I guess you could use it to again to damage like a mammoth tank a little bit better than like damaging a flame tank with like this thing, but whatever. All right, so the Tiberium auto rifle. So the Tiberium auto rifle basically suffers the same sort of problem that like the chemical spray has, in that like it doesn't do a lot of damage to like mutants, and it doesn't really like do a whole lot of damage either. It does have like a lot of more range, but at least going for it, so it's got that going for it. But it's a very lackluster weapon. Basically, there's other stuff I'd rather spend my money on. I think in multiplayer and like single player, like you're basically not using it that much because you might make viscerays out of it too. So let's just throw that right there. I think because that's where it basically belongs. The Tiberium Fletchet gun. So the Tiberium Fletchet gun is basically like a very like it's basically as powerful like as the Tiberium like weapons basically get. It's just like an auto rifle that fires like Tiberium shards of stuff that can at least damage like vehicles and stuff like that. So it's got that going for it. But again, it's not that great, and it does have like proper like making like stuff that you may not want to fight. Let's just throw that right there, I think. And then we have the repair gun. So I'll note that the repair gun is basically used to repair like vehicles in like team-based gameplay. Is while like the enemy engineers they use against like stuff to sort of repair on you as well. Not really that much, but it's a thing. The repair gun basically has so much basically going for it because it can basically remove explosives. It can repair like your friends, repair your like everything else. It's just a god tier S tier weapon. So let's just throw it up there because that's where it basically deserves. This thing will basically carry your team in like so much of like the gameplay. So it has to be up here. All right, so we're now down to like the tools here, which is basically the C4, the ion cannon beacon, and the nuclear strike beacon. This is basically carried by like the hot wires and like the technician basically characters in multiplayer, and basically it's used to like bring down buildings is what you can basically like use it for. The remote C4 is probably like the most like cheesy of it because you can actually like can plant on vehicles and stuff like that. I believe drive it up to like something and explode it up that way, and as you can probably guess, you can basically use it to like set like explosive like mines if like you want. They'll obviously get the proximity mines for that. Primarily it's used to like go into like a building, drop on like their terminal, blow up this building that way. So pretty awesome. I think I probably would send it right about there in like the A tier because basically you can just plant it and just blow something up with it real fast, real nice. Or you can use it to like throw it at like someone like in single player or multiplayer, blow up the C4 in their face, do a lot of damage to them that way. The proximity, like well, not proximity, but the time C4. Time C4 basically has a problem with it in that like you actually have to wait for a timer to go off. So it basically like you plant it in like an enemy structure's like terminal, and you have to basically like sit there and camp like your C4 waiting for it to go off, so to speak, because engineers will come in and try and disarm it if like basically leave it there. It's not a bad thing. Everyone basically gets to carry it, but it could be a lot better, I guess, is the thing. Maybe like a short fuse. I realize that basically the purpose, like, so that people have a chance to sort of disarm it with like the engineers, but eh. Let's put it at the top of C tier, because that's basically where it belongs. Alright, the proximity, like, mines. So, mines basically are something you can actually use in, like, hilarious ways. Basically, they're available to hardware, and they can basically like, plant a bunch of, like, mines basically around, like, say, they're, a doorway, basically, into a building, and basically blow up people trying to enter that doorway. They can be such, like, scary things, basically, to, like, deter people from, like, just running into stuff, so, just, like, nice. easy like a B tier like weapon sources for right there. And finally, we have like the ion cannon beacon and the nuclear strike beacon. So I'm just gonna throw this basically up here to like S tier. What's really nice about like the like beacons is that they basically have a sort of like sort of mini game basically to them. Whenever they're basically planted, there's basically a timer that goes off where after a certain amount of time, a nuclear strike or an ion like strike will basically happen on that location, blowing up basically everything around it. And what basically happens is that people actually like will basically play like a sort of capture the flag type of thing where engineers will basically try to arm it and everyone will basically try to defend it. It doesn't really matter where you basically plant them either. So you can basically plant them outside a building to basically blow it up. You can plant it inside a building. It doesn't really matter at all. So, it's basically got that going for it. It's very, very cool way of like, having like a sort of like mini game inside like, a real a game. And of course you can also use it in like the single player to do a lot of stuff as well, to like blow up stuff too. Yeah, an S tier, weapon to be sure. Alright, well, that's basically the Renegade weapons. Maybe there's some will have like vehicles at some point, but DFuxa. Let's put plays then. Handheld. Because these are basically all the ranked like weapons you can basically hold, not like the vehicles and stuff like that. By the way, note that in this list I never had like an F tier basically here because none of like these like things are actually all that bad. They all serve a purpose really. So at least that's something I like say about Renegade. Yeah, fairly balanced weapons basically for like its time. Alright, well, there's basically our tier list for you guys. This one's basically a little bit shorter, hopefully, so that's nice. Now, I will note, by the way, I've decided I'm going to go back to, like, Dark Reign, by the way. And I'm actually, like, going through my, like, old Let's Plays, basically, to look at my videos, basically, for them. I plan to actually go through and maybe do, like, a mission breakdown for, like, Dark Reign, and maybe, like, unit breakdown as well, if I have the time to make that stuff. So, look forward to that in the future, but for now, this will be it for tier list for a little bit. Maybe I'll see, like, tomorrow if, like, I might manage to complete it in that time. We'll see. Alright, that. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time.